there's loads of species of AI, and the AI that we're talking about today really and people get excited about is generative AI.
What are some interesting ways L&D professionals can use LLMs in their workflow, and can you share some personal experiences as well?
And I'll say to the tool, give me a devil's advocate view. What am I missing here? This is my view. What potentially have I missed?
What is the biggest trend that you see coming to define the future of learning and development?
So accessible that we can do that. So I think for me, that's going to be the next step.
Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Genius Talk, where we pick the brains of thought leaders from the world of L&D. I'm Apurva, your session host for tonight, and I'm also an L&D marketer from Animaker. For the people who don't know, Animaker is a DIY animation platform with over 30 million users across the globe. We are also ranked as the #1 design tool on G2 reviews. In today's episode, we have got Ross Stevenson with us, and we are going to be discussing about the topic, how to become an AI smart L&D professional. Ross is the founder and also the chief learning strategist at Steal These Thoughts. It is a company that helps organizations harness generative AI for L&D. With nearly 2 decades of experience, Ross is a highly influential figure in the L&D community. He has also been enlightening the L&D space about learning technologies through his blogs and newsletters. We are so happy to have him here. Welcome to the session, Ross.
Well, thank you for having me, and I appreciate that lovely introduction there as well. So yeah, excited to chat.
The interview has got 3 sections. The first part of the interview is going to be about your professional journey. We're going to go back in time and we're going to talk about some history, how it all started and all that. And the second part of the interview is going to be the topic of the day, that is how can you become an AI smart L&D professional. And the third part is going to be an interesting rapid fire round, which I'm super excited about, and I've got a lot of questions for that. So can we jump into the first part of the interview?
Go for it.
Okay, the first part is called the Genius Journey, where we'll be going back in time and we are going to see some of the key highlighting moments of your incredible career. You have an expertise in the emerging learning technologies in L&D space, and you have also been in the industry for around 20 years now. So just tell me how it all started. Were you an L&D professional from the beginning, or were you part of some other field and then you jumped into L&D?
Yeah, definitely. So very good questions. I think that the answer to that is I fell into it. So I didn't choose it as a career. I didn't know it existed. What originally happened was I fell into a HR team for a big American global organization. And all of my accreditations, I was essentially trained to be a software engineer. I was going to go do computer science after I finished kind of my A-levels here in the UK. And I'd been doing Java programming, Oracle, all of these things that are popular now, but weren't kind of popular 20 to 22 years ago. And I just fell into HR. So I randomly joined a team one day because I was looking for a job before going to the COF for technical jobs, and I actually started to really enjoy the kind of people profession. And what I identified that worked really well was that a lot of HR and L&D teams weren't very good with technology. That's probably still the same today, to be quite honest, but I kind of noted that my understanding of technology, because I've been educated in that realm and understanding how different tools work and why they work, ended up being quite an advantage. So I kind of more opportunities just appeared in that world, and I kept saying yes. There was never a conscious decision where I said I was going to stay in HR or do L&D. It's just basically more people are like, oh, that's interesting, you could do this thing, can you come and help us with this? So doors opened, I kind of just walked through those doors and saw where they took me. And I eventually moved into L&D as a full just L&D and not overall HR, maybe about 13, 14 years ago, where I said there's probably something here where I can specialize in L&D. And to be quite candid, that's pretty much because I hated L&D in most organizations. I was a recipient of really bad e-learning, really bad digital learning solutions. And I was like, if I can go do this job to not have to do these things, I will go get that job for that. And that's kind of how it started. And what happened there was I was able to marry these two worlds of I understand digital technology very well, and that's what I see as my advantage. And that world wants to understand it, and they want to understand how can we create better products, better tools with that. So it just, at the time, felt like an easy kind of marriage to make. And thankfully for me, I've been able to make a career out of that. And as I said, I've just continued to kind of walk through doors people have opened to me and said, do you want to come and try this? And I've gone, yeah, why not? And we're kind of here where we are now.
That's actually a very interesting journey. And so can you tell us more about your journey with your blog or website, Steal These Thoughts, and how did you come up with the idea, and why specifically AI and tech within L&D?
Yeah, so the first one for Steal These Thoughts is, to be quite honest, I was bored. I was bored one day. I'm being an L&D professional, I think you have to practice what you preach and be quite curious. And I have always been interested in the professional area of marketing as a whole, understanding that kind of human connection, psychological behavior, getting attention, why do people do things. And this is like before the whole influencer explosion, probably about 15 years ago and whatnot. And I kind of played around with posting things on LinkedIn and writing articles. And what I found was basically that as I, in my career, started to get invited to kind of like conferences or meetups and stuff, what I noticed was that for whatever reason, people were interested in some of the digital projects that I was doing. And what I found is that I just couldn't give people time one-on-one to explain all the things that I'm doing. I was like, why don't I just write an article or write, a blog that probably no one's going to read apart from 4 people somewhere. And I'll just put it online. I'll just say to people, if you want to find out how I'm doing these things at this company and the kind of projects that we're doing, go read it there. So that's how it all started. And I think really it was snowballed organically. I never had a plan. I still don't really have a plan now, if I'm quite honest. I'm just doing what I'm doing. But I was really intrigued in, how does a person build a newsletter? Like, how does that process work? How do tools like MailChimp work and ConvertKit? How can I build that? I was really interested in the understanding of customer acquisition. How do you engage people with different marketing techniques? So it all really came out of an experiment. And the reason why it's called Steal These Thoughts is, a number of reasons, because I didn't want to call it Ross's L&D Academy, that sounds pretty damn boring. But there was also lots of stuff where when I was a kid, there was a band called System of a Down that had this album called Steal This Album. And that kind of marketing thing always stayed with me, because you'd go into a store and it would say, steal this album. Oh God, that's like so inventive. So I was just like, all right, if I'm just going to share my insights and projects with people, I'll just call it Steal These Thoughts. And it just grew from there. So I just kind of posted it online, and I just said, if you're interested, come take a look. There was no grand marketing campaign. I just kind of put out it there a few times. People would find it organically. More people would reach out to me. And it's grown into what it is today, which, thankfully is my main business, where I have thousands of people that engage with the newsletter, pay for it, do all these things. So it's weird how really it didn't really come out of anything. It was just, that'd be quite fun to understand how that newsletter business works. How about I go and do that? And I did it for 7 years part-time. So it's only the last year where I said, right, I'm not going to work for a company now. I'm going to take it full-time. So yeah, that's pretty much why it happened and where it is today.
I think the very first newsletter I started reading about L&D was your newsletter that I stumbled on. So it was really interesting for me to know about what is happening and how tech is blending well with, what are the opportunities to blend tech with L&D. It was really informative. We are going to the main part of the interview, the part 2, which is called Picking the Genius Brain. I came across an interesting article about AI-powered authoring tools are enabling subject matter experts to easily create courses. While this democratizes the content creation process, what does this mean for the future of the IDs? Do they have to worry about it?
Yes, popular question, isn't it? I mean, so my 2 cents would be that I think what kind of in this spectrum or this bubble of every single individual is probably going to think they can create a training course or be the instructional designer. And I think long term, that's probably going to be a mistake, because it's kind of like saying, because we've all got ChatGPT, we can all be a writer and all write great works of art, and we won't need to look at these other people. But it's just not the case, because there's other skills behind that, especially when you talk about IDs and N&D people, is that these individuals have the context, they have the design brain, they're building the whole user experience from end to end. Whereas, your casual SME is not going to think about that. They're not going to go, oh, okay, how do we build a really good user experience to make sure that, A, this engages people, and B, it gives them value? Very similar to even the marketing world, where if you believe what's online, everyone can be a marketer, everyone can do this now because of ChatGPT, but it's not true. Like, you've got tools, and depending upon the intent and your experience to wield those tools intelligently, yes, you could do well. And I think I would be wrong to say that there won't be some job reshaping. Of course there will be with tools. But in the long term, I still think that if we look at IDs as critical thinkers and designers, and then saying, well, you could let an SME go and build something, but, it might be 10% good and it may not get no return on investment. Or you could work with a team of individuals who specialize in great user experiences, great design, and they can also use these tools. So I'm conflicted. My business mind says, look, companies are going to try to do that. It's evident. They're going to think we can cut costs, we can get rid of teams, we can get other people to do it, tools to do it for us. That's just humans. That's what we do. We look for efficiencies and how to cut through stuff. But I think from an overall standpoint, I would like to think that we'll make those mistakes, and then we'll come back to our senses in 2 or 3 years' time, and then we'll go, okay, we need to relook at this.
But there's also a flip side to this, right? IDs have access to AI, so they can ask the ChatGPT to act as a subject matter expert and give me the content. And there's a flip side to that as well. So does that mean SMEs will be at stake? Maybe there's a situation like this as well, right? What's your thought about this?
Yeah, I think what these tools are really good at is they can give you a generic viewpoint. So there's really good user research tools at the moment, as an example, that you could plug into ChatGPT. And I work with some teams of product and marketing that use that for their own kind of audience research, which is great. But it can take you so far. It can give you a generic view of the world, and depending upon what your role is in those industries, that might be great. But if you're working in an organization and you're designing something specifically for that culture and people in that culture, I think you need that add-on, which is, what are the contextual, cultural things that I need to know? But I still think it's good, because these tools may be able to help you get 60% of the way, and all you need to do is that 40% internally, which I still think is a huge win.
So the next question is, there is a general misconception that AI will surpass human intelligence and replace humans at work. Not only companies that are seeking learning solutions, but many learning professionals also think of, while thinking of adapting AI, they have this mindset. So if your answer is no, AI won't completely replace humans, then what is the one thing that sets human better apart than AI?
Yeah, it's interesting, because I mean, the caveat is it might. Like, there might be a form of AI that will replace us. Whether we see that in our lifetime, I don't know. Like, there's so much kind of different noise that comes out, and I think when people hear the word AI, because AI means a lot of different things, it's kind of been used by a lot of marketing teams now to use for one kind of meaning, whereas actually there's loads of species of AI, and the AI that we're talking about today, really, and people get excited about, is generative AI. And I think, what we see in the movies like the Terminator or Ex Machina and all these other films, that's what is essentially what people view as AI, which is sentient, it's emotional, it feels. That doesn't exist. And I think the problem is people were so easily convinced by ChatGPT and its confidence, and like, oh my God, it's already here and it's going to do that. Well, we know it's not, but it doesn't mean to say that there isn't some efficiencies, like I say, it can help us with. I mean, in terms of humans, again, I'm very optimistic, I'm very hopeful in terms of, I still think the future is human powered, and we should look at any of these things that we have now as tools, and they should be tools that we use to enhance the human experience.
I think I read a blog about, the most I think the advantage that you have in this scenario is you being the human is the most advantageous thing. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. But like I say, 30 years from now, if Terminator exists, so that may be a different conversation. So
while going through one of your newsletters, I came across an interesting piece where you discussed that ChatGPT helped you overcome your writer's block by demonstrating that LLMs can spark creativity. So this led me to think about a question. So what are some interesting ways L&D professionals can use LLMs in their workflow, and can you share some personal experiences?
yeah, definitely. So I like to do research. I share a lot in the newsletter to kind of say what either I'm doing personally or what I'm doing with companies. Obviously, the context of that is I'm a one-person business, so I do rely on some AI enhancements to help me do stuff, which is great. So in terms of use cases, so a couple that I really enjoy is one which I call thought partnering, or some people call a sparring partner, which basically means I don't get these tools to create content for me, because basically my business is writing, creating content, like that's kind of be me and what I'm doing. But what I do enjoy doing is saying to a tool like ChatGPT, an example you gave there is that, I've got an idea for this, and I'd love to just bounce it off someone else. The problem is, as a one-person business, I have no one else to bounce it off of. It's just me. So being able to go to an AI tool that has the world's information and say, well, I'm thinking about writing this. This is my thesis. This is the angle. This is what I want people to get out of this. And then I'll say to the tool, give me a devil's advocate view. What am I missing here? This is my view. What potentially have I missed? Or is there, black spots that I haven't seen in this that I've just, and I find it really helpful to just say, oh, okay. And it will come back and go, well, for your audience, have you thought about this thing maybe? Or could you talk more about that? Or it might ask me questions about what's your personal experiences with this thing that you highlight here. And I find that incredibly helpful as not only someone that writes or as a designer as well, because then what it's basically given me is another team member to bounce off of, poke holes in my thesis, but also improve my work.
Traditional instructor-led trainings have been a long stay for decades. However, the concept of using chatbots as trainers is becoming popular recently. So let's explore the potential of integrating chatbots into a training program. So compared to a traditional-led instructor approach, how can chatbots reshape the learner interactions, knowledge retention, and overall training effectiveness?
Yeah, very good question. I suppose there's a couple of ways. So in terms of, I'll give you a couple of examples. So say you are an instructor that leads a management development program at an organization. So what you can do in between those times where you're not having live instruction sessions is you can use a chatbot to help cement what you've been talking about in the previous session. So an example might be the first session is, beginners 101 to management at X company, and then the next session might be 2 or 3 weeks away, right? What you could do is deploy a chatbot based on the information from both of those sessions, and to start to get people thinking about, well, how do I put into practice what I've learned from session 1, and how do I start to prepare for session 2? But then that chatbot can also support them in that practice. So it can go back over what they've already covered in the session. It can give examples specifically for their context in the organization, how they could approach that, what are some of the things that they can do. So that's one way you could use it that I think just helps cement what you're already trying to teach people as part of those experiences. Another way you can use it, I think is quite inventive that I've seen at the moment is, and if you're using one of the chatbots that have like the voice enabled functionality, is you can use it in the actual workshop. So you could have a main instructor, and then if you were to go into breakout sessions, you could use a conversational AI assistant where they could talk to it like Siri on your phone or the voice on ChatGPT. And actually my Siri's about to start then, I've said it. And basically have a conversation with that in the session. So you could say, the instructor can go, right, I'm going to break out these 4 different groups. And then as odd as it kind of sounds, the conversational AI assistant could be like the micro facilitator in that group and keep the group on track, answer questions, kind of set time. I think that's an interesting concept that you can use that for to support you, especially if you're a standalone instructor as well.
When you said about, how you can use it in between the sessions to just keep the momentum going for the learner, can you think of it as spaced learning, like where you again recall whatever you have read in the previous session so that you absorb whatever you have read in the previous one and go fresh to the next session?
Definitely, yeah, definitely. And I think it's, I think that's paramount, right? Because most organizations, there may be weeks or months between certain instructor-led sessions. So it's about helping to at least cement, can people put into practice what they've learned? And then on top of that, and this is really the power of these conversational assistants, is how do we make it personalized to them? Because in the instructor-led session, it will be quite, not generic, but it will appeal to everyone. So there's a lot of power in that I'm hoping the industry will kind of really look to exploit over the next few years.
Talking about designing courses with AI, I wanted to highlight one of your LinkedIn posts where you mentioned that more content doesn't necessarily mean better learning experience, which is absolutely true. But how can people escape this trap of overloading courses with too much content, particularly in this scenario where AI is used to create the content?
I know it's really difficult, because I think what it is that I think the L&D industry, like most industry, has its bad practices. I think one of the bad practices is content stuffing, and I think what AI has done is basically put that on steroids. It's made that even easier. Whereas beforehand, if you wanted to, stuff more content in, fundamentally you'd have to create all of it. But whereas now AI is kind of democratizing that to say it's going to do it for you really fast. So what it actually requires is a mindset shift on, and like I said, you'll know this from a marketing perspective, how do you really understand to structure a good article, a blog, a newsletter, a post, whatever it is. There is a structure and an art in that. Without having that understanding, it's so easy for people just to stuff more and more in. I see it on courses all the time where it's like, what we'll do is, instead of thinking about how do we reshape or evolve the course, we'll just keep dropping more stuff in. So what ended up being really good with like maybe 5 or 6 modules ends up being 50 modules in about 6 months' time, because we don't go back to that. But the thing is with that as well, it's because I think as an industry and in most companies, there's a couple of things. One, we're not really challenged. I think a lot of teams are under-resourced and time poor. So I definitely understand the difficulty in, it's very easy for me to say, oh, just don't do it and don't pump some more content in. But unfortunately, the way that teams are measured in organizations is usually in the wrong way. They're usually measured in how much content have they pumped out in the last year, how many people have engaged with that content, and we conflate people looking at content with content being valuable. So the problem is it's more of a systematic difficulty rather than saying to people, don't do that, because you're fundamentally saying to them, you're changing their whole way of life and the whole way they live that life. So I think that's something that as a society of people who are in these companies, we really have to sit down and think about how do we reshape that. I think it's just unfortunate that that's been a problem for a long time. There's a company called Filtered here in the UK that have a great word for it called content chaos. And I think that's the right word for it as well. And it's always been a problem. But unfortunately, we've come into the AI era, and instead of us saying, how do we not take these bad practices and just use great technology to amplify that, we haven't done that. We've basically just said, right, we're just going to create more now because we've got these tools that can allow us to create more or do this. So I haven't got the answer. I think it is realistically about the industry sitting there and thinking at how do we look at experiences as a whole. And I think the industry has fallen into the trap, which most industries have from a digital perspective, of the content is king for everything. Content is great. It's great in a wider ecosystem of tools. But from a learning standpoint, we're all biologically programmed to learn. So we learn from friends and family, from co-workers, some little moments that we can never measure. But the issue really comes back to the way the industry measures success is through content, size of content libraries, how many times people are using content. So although I'll keep talking about it and telling people, please don't keep building more content, because we don't really need more content. We need better structured content. Like I said, like if you're only using it for content creation at the moment, you're probably only using it to 5% of its of its capability. But of course, in the industry, there's no company that's gonna say, don't keep creating content, because a lot of the tools at the moment are create more content. People want more content libraries, so it's an industry thing, really.
What is your perspective on incorporating AI-generated video content into L&D training materials? How do you anticipate the technology of influencing the efficacy and the engagement levels of training programs?
Yeah, I'm conflicted on it at the moment, because I've played around with a lot of the tools. I have a lot of friends who work at the companies, and I think the technology itself is, of course, incredibly revolutionary. If we spoke about this 2 years ago, people would think we're lying pretty much about what's available now. But it's okay at the moment. It's like, I think it's lost its wow factor a little bit, because there's now so many companies that are coming out with the same stuff, and it's still very clearly robotic. I know there's those updates that are coming out all the time, but there's not one quite yet that's available to us commercially that's really stood out and gone, oh, that was really hard to tell. There's all these ones that we've seen behind closed doors that companies show and go, oh, and it looks amazing. And there's one from Microsoft where I couldn't tell the difference. It was incredibly impressive, but it's not available for us to use as consumers. So it makes you think, like, is that something that's ever really going to reach us in the next 5 or 10 years? I'm not sure, but I think from a learning standpoint, again, great technology. I just don't think right now it's being used efficiently. So what I mean by that is, if we go back to our bad practices, is instead of saying, how can we design really good learning solutions where we use AI avatars to maybe jump in and help explain complex stuff or add some value into it, what we seem to be doing is the same thing again, where, we took a PowerPoint and we pushed it into an e-learning, or we pushed it into somewhere else with no thinking about what we do. And now we're just taking the e-learning and we're pushing it into an AI avatar tool, and we're not really thinking about the experience. So I think for me, it's like the case of great technology. It's just that we need to apply it better. Just keep an eye out on them, experiment, and then just use it intelligently.
Whenever I talk about using AI for work with L&D professionals, the one common thing that always comes up is the fear of data privacy. So most of them show concerns over training publicly available LLMs with their company's internal information. What are some ways to safely use the LLMs without risking the company's information going out in public? And do AI vendors provide the option to limit the way how the LLMs use to learn from it? What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so the answer is yes and yes, and you have two options. So the first option is, depending upon the size of your company, what you want to do is buy either a business license or an enterprise license with companies like OpenAI with ChatGPT, or Microsoft with Microsoft Copilot. So if we take an example of OpenAI with ChatGPT, you can get different licenses. So if you pay for a Teams license, which I think at the time of us talking is about $25 for 2 people to be on the Teams license, basically what that means is that what you put into the system won't get sent back to OpenAI. It is kept into your organization. They don't use it to train data. You can get an enterprise version as well, which is usually, that's for a couple of thousand people, even more, can be quite expensive. But again, what essentially they will do, OpenAI and Microsoft and others, is say, here's a version of our LLM, we'll help you train it on your company's data. That will be secure to your server, as so everything is hosted locally in the organization, and it doesn't send anything back to OpenAI. So an example of that at the moment is what Apple's done in the last few days. So obviously Apple have just announced OpenAI is going to be on their phones, and that'll work in a very similar way. So all of the interactions will happen locally on the device, and then if it does need to send data back, it will ask you as a user to say, can I use ChatGPT to do this? Then if you say yes, go ahead. What then happens is it will talk to ChatGPT to get the answer, but it won't send that information to OpenAI to train on. It keeps all of that local. From a data perspective and from a security perspective, it would definitely be always go for enterprise tools. Don't risk your life using the tools that are available commercially. Even if you pay for ChatGPT, ChatGPT Plus is not secure if you're a company. You need to have a Teams version or an enterprise version.
That's actually a very useful information. So you have been consulting and helping companies to overcome learning challenges for years. So what are some interesting ways you have used AI or seen people use AI to solve these challenges?
I haven't seen a lot of people do a lot at the moment. When I'm working with companies, a lot of my work is based in, to your point before, a lot of them are worried about data and security. So a lot of the task is in, one, how do we educate organizations on what this technology is, how it works, the opportunities, the risks, the limitations, which is great, but then experimenting. So doing small experiments with, like we were discussing before, about the conversational assistants. So I spend a lot of my time at the moment building conversational chatbots for organizations in things like onboarding or performance reviews and that. And for a lot of them, that's their first foray into this world. For some others, I work with them in the fact that they bought ChatGPT or Microsoft Copilot, and they just want to understand, what could we use this for? What are 5 things that we can do? So my experience with companies in using this at the moment is a lot of people are in the exploration phase. So a lot of my work, and others who work in the same field as me, is based in how do we help people build that trust through experimentation and exploration. So it will take time, but it's definitely happening. And there's people online, not just me, other people who are sharing some of those experiments to hopefully get more people moving in that direction to think about what is actually possible.
We have been talking about different ways in which AI can help L&D professionals till now. For creating training materials, chat bots for conversational, all that stuff. I'm pretty sure that the list is pretty big, but how can one be on the top of all these things, rising changes? How to be updated about all these things? Like, I think you are the best person to answer this question as well.
It's so hard. I mean, even I can't keep up with all of it, to be quite honest. I think my advice is, what I try to do is to niche it down to my industry, because it affects so many industries. What I try to do is keep up to date with things and voices with people who are kind of related to my industry or have some kind of understanding of the industry, so I can do that. I mean, I give some examples where, so there's kind of 2 newsletters that I follow specifically. I mean, there's so many AI newsletters, but I only follow 2. So there's one called The Neuron, which I think is spelled Neuron, and they're pretty big. There's another one called The AI Exchange. I can't remember his newsletter, but I do know the website. So there's a chap called, I hope I'm pronouncing his last name correctly, Andrew Nung. And he is actually the CEO and creator of the course platform Coursera. He is also an individual that worked at Google DeepMind and worked on AI for many, many years. And he has a free learning academy called Deep Learning AI. I think it's deeplearning.ai. And there's loads of free courses on there that can really help a lot of people just get involved. And he and his team are really good in keeping people kind of updated. It's a little bit techy, so it's not always accessible to everyone, but I think that's a really good component to keep up with. And I think my advice is, more than anything, is seek out the people who are actually building with AI, and the reason why I say that is because I'm not an AI expert. So I'm an L&D, I'm a chief learning strategist. Technology is part of my thing, so AI is going to be part of that. But I would definitely never label myself as kind of an AI strategist or AI expert. I probably know a little bit more than a few other people, and I'm a couple of weeks ahead. But I'm able to do that because I make the time to keep up with stuff. You want to find out the people who can talk to you about, this new thing's been released, what does that mean for you? And what does that mean for your industry? And what are the things that you can do? So, but I'd say the Neuron, AI Exchange, Andrew Nung, I think those few, definitely explore. You'll probably get quite a bit there, just keeping up to date on those feeds.
Okay, that's actually going to be very useful for the people who are watching this video. So the world of L&D is constantly evolving, as we spoke. So Looking ahead in the next 5 years, what is the biggest trend that you see coming to define the future of learning and development?
I think it's personalization. True personalization. I think with technology now and generative AI, I think what's going to happen is the tools for us as general users are going to get even easier to access. So we'll be able to build things a lot more simpler than we do today, which means we can create even more interesting products in the learning field. And I think what that will mean is that we can truly do this personalization thing. I think in the industry, we've spoken about this for so long, and most industries do. But I think really now we've got the technology where it's so accessible that we can do that. So I think for me, that's going to be the next biggest thing, specifically in the 5 years, is how do we take that? How do we use that intelligently? And how do we make that the norm? So yeah, I'm really big on conversational assistance, using that for personalization, and then kind of not entirely reshaping, but evolving what we do now. So yeah, that's my prediction anyway.
That's a very interesting prediction, to be honest. So I think we have come to the end of the session 2, part 2 of the interview. So we are going to get into the part 3 of the interview, that is rapid fire round. Your top 3 go-to AI tools other than ChatGPT.
Oh God, it's going to shock people. I don't use a lot outside ChatGPT, so it's definitely Perplexity. So I'd say Perplexity, Notebook LLM, which is new, which is from Google. Yeah, it's called Notebook LLM. So it basically just allows you to get loads of data together and review it. And then the last one, it's not really an AI tool, but it's got AI features. So I use Descript for videos. So that's my one, but that's not uniquely AI, I suppose.
Okay. So what is your most favorite and the least favorite part of your profession?
Oh God, what is my most favorite? So my most favorite part is, and this will sound corny, but it's just seeing people being able to understand the enormity of the possible in terms of learning, in terms of excelling, in terms of them having the confidence to be like, oh, I could go and do this thing and learn that. And that's been a big part of my career. So I enjoy that. I mean, the worst thing is I'm mostly an introvert, although my online persona may not lead into that. I am quite an introverted guy. So I find conferences, even though I'm there doing talks, incredibly exhausting, and general big company things exhausting. So I don't enjoy that, which is odd to say because people find me at conferences, to talking to thousands of people, but that's not a joy of my life. I think if you put a gun to my head, that would be the first thing I would take away and probably say if I didn't have to do that, I wouldn't do it.
In your opinion, what is the one skill that every L&D professional must have?
It needs to be a good communicator. It's very generic, but I think there's a very core human skill, and by communication, that is able to influence people, to write well, to get across your key messages. I think, not even just L&D, if you can't do that in life, it's really hard to kind of get where you want and to build the career and build the life that you want. So I would say as much as possible, just get out there and all forms, just know how to be a really good communicator.
If you get a chance to change anything in this world, what would it be? And it can be anything. Hypothetical question.
Anything in the world, not L&D.
Anything.
If I could do anything, change anything in the world, this is going to sound weird, but I'd probably be a lead singer of a heavy metal band. That's probably what I would do personally. That's what I would change. That lifestyle kind of excites me a little bit. So if I could sing or scream, I would be doing that for sure.
That's interesting. What are the newsletters and forums and communities that you would recommend for somebody who is just starting out their L&D journey?
Yeah, I think for L&D specific, there's a great free community called L&D Shakers, run by, hopefully I'm saying the last name correctly, Anna Maria Dorgo, which is really good. There's also Offbeat from Lavinia. I'm sorry, Lavinia, you're listening to this. I cannot pronounce your last name, so I can't do it. So I'd say Offbeat L&D Shakers. If you're looking for a community, you're looking to kind of start off there for sure. And I think in general, there's loads of great people around L&D in general, but I think it's more about where do you want to niche into. That's where your crowd is going to be pretty much, or where your tribe's going to be. But I think, L&D Shakers is free to join, so you can do that. I think Offbeat may be paid. I think I'm correct on that, but you can kind of go to that as the next thing there. But I think starting off there would be quite good. And then, I think in general, there's loads of good thinkers in the L&D space. I mean, there's people like David James at 360 Learning. There's people like Nick Shackleton-Jones. David Arnu at Growth Tribe, which is another interesting company there as well. But yeah, I check out L&D Shakers, check out Offbeat for sure. Go to those communities.
L&D Shakers, where can we find this forum?
So you could, LinkedIn. So you go to LinkedIn, there's L&D Shakers on there. There's about 10,000 L&D pros in there, so it's pretty big. And they have a Slack group as well. I have no idea how you get into the Slack group these days, but I think it's you join on LinkedIn, and you'll get access there. So yeah, that's free, and there's loads of people in there, so you can start to kind of put feelers out into that world.
Let me check it out. So if you had chosen a different occupation, what would it have been?
Professionally, or I think heavy metal singer again. I think that'd be the thing. I think either that or Batman. If Batman was real, probably I'll be Batman. But one of those two. I think one of those two I would have done, because to be quite honest, I really do enjoy what I do now. So there's nothing where I've sat there and gone, oh, I'd really want to go and do X or Y. But I think that's because in the L&D world, you're involved with so much stuff. You're quite lucky that you get to take on so many different things. So it's quite nice to do that. But if it was, the multiverse, as they say in Marvel, and it was different space and time, I'd probably be, for sure, in a heavy metal band.
Okay, that's nice. What's one thing you wish you knew earlier when you started your career? Like, what's the one thing you knew that at that moment?
Oh God, that's a very good question. I should know this because I wrote a book about this that I've published. So, but I think there's many things really. I think the thing is, for me, is that, and this is controversial, but it's also said there's a professor called Scott Galloway in America, and he said the same thing about, I wish that I didn't try to focus so much on finding my passion, and I wish that I focused on my talents and what I was actually good at, and then using that to build my career. I think that was probably one of the things that I definitely wish I did, and I wish someone told me when I was younger, because that would have saved me a lot of aggro where I was waiting to find my passion and then pick a career or whatever, where I can definitely say at the age of 37 now, that's not quite how life works out and goes that way. So I would definitely do that. The other thing would be, as much as possible, saying to people is, just focus on building your skills, focus on getting the right skills for what you're doing, being adaptable. I cannot emphasize enough how much you need to be adaptable in this life in general, but to be able to move seamlessly and pick up new skills and do that. So I actually wish I saved my money on education a little bit, and I wish someone had just kind of said to me, in terms of business, these are the things that you should focus on. Really find out the things that you're good at and you enjoy, and that you can use that to make money, and then continue to build your skills, because although we don't seem to realize it when we're younger, you don't just go to university and then it stops. Like, you are having to continuously keep going and doing that. So I think, those are the things that I wish someone would have told me, and I would have probably spent a lot more time in my 20s doing that.
What are you reading or listening to at the moment?
What am I listening to reading? So a number of things. So I'm currently listening to, I think it's called, is it $100 Million Leads from Alex Hormozy?
This is the last question. So what is that one piece of information that you would want viewers of this video not to forget when they are thinking about AI or any learning tech in their learning?
I'd always say to people, just don't lose the human in the experience, or always look to say, how can tech enhance what you're doing, not hinder? And essentially, in a nutshell, is how can you use it to do better things and good things, not replace you. Like, not replace, because otherwise life would just be really boring. Like, I see the stuff online about, for years, tech and AI in general, like, if I automated all the stuff or got AI to, what would I do? Just cut the grass. Like, it'd be pretty boring life. So that'd be my thing to people with tech is, don't be afraid of it. it is a digital world. That's kind of how we go now. But as much as possible, look to how you can use it for your benefit. And if you do that, you'll always be employable. Like if you're the person that's thinking critically about how do I use these things, you won't have any issues. Just don't be the person that sits there with the head in the sand and hoping that these things are going to disappear, because they're not going to disappear.
With that, we've come to the end of the session. Thank you so much, Ross, for being so generous and sharing your expertise about AI with us. I think it was really an interesting session for me, and I feel people also will find it really interesting. So thank you so much.
Great. Well, thank you for the conversation. I enjoyed it.